Breaking brand new report reveals Iranian sleeper cells waiting decades to unleash hell upon America. This nightmare scenario is growing closer. Iranian sleeper cells hibernating for perhaps decades are waiting to unleash their fury upon America should President Trump bomb Iran. 2002 Wargames invasion of Iran resulted in the deaths of 20,000 plus Americans within the first 24 hours. By Stefan, Stanford, All News Pipeline, Live Free or Die. While according to this Thursday story from ABC Australia, President Donald Trump may be preparing to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities after so-called senior officials within the Australian government told ABC the bombing could begin as early as next month. According to Fox News national security correspondent Jennifer Griffin, who questioned U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis on Friday, that ABC News report is fiction. Just the latest in a string of fake news reports coming from the mainstream media, which seems to be trying to push President Trump and America into a war with just about anybody, as we see detailed within this AMP story, as is perfectly explained by Fox News' Tucker Carlson in the first video below. A war with Iran could be absolutely disastrous for America, with Carlson warning it could destroy President Trump's presidency. As Carlson tells us, the foreign policy establishment here in America is working overtime to ensnare President Trump and America in the same kind of mess in Iran that then candidate Trump vowed to never get America into during one of the Republican presidential debates back in February of 2016. Carlson tells us that the only people who really want war with Iran are money and war-hungry Washington, D.C. insiders and Pentagon private contractors, while he outlines for us the 2002 war games played out versus an imaginary opponent believed to be Iran called Millennium Challenge 2002. Those simulations resulted in the deaths of over 20,000 Americans and the destruction of 16 warships within the first 24 hours, and needless to say, those war games which were alleged to simulate an invasion of Iran were abandoned soon after that. And while those war games showed the kind of opponent that Iran might be should the U.S. attempt to invade a country nearly 4 times the size of Iraq, a country that has a much stronger military than Iraq ever had and a country in which 95% of them are Shia Muslims, that simulation didn't include what might happen here in the U.S. should we go to war against Iran. As this news story from the Express that the Drudge Report linked to on Thursday reports, a senior Iranian military commander has warned that Iran is prepared to send terrorists to the U.S. following President Trump's Twitter warning to the Iranian president as seen in the screenshot below. Yet we remind you that Iran has long had sleeper cells in this country, as Adam Greedo reported back in April of 2017 at the Washington Free Beacon. As Greedo reported then, those sleeper cells have been operating largely unfettered, and with the full awareness and alarm of members of the U.S. Congress. From Greedo's April of 2017 story. Iranian-backed militants are operating across the United States mostly unfettered, raising concerns in Congress and among regional experts that these sleeper cell agents are poised to launch a large-scale attack on the American homeland, according to testimony before lawmakers. Iranian agents tied to the terror group Hezbollah have already been discovered in the United States plotting attacks, giving rise to fears that Tehran could order a strike inside America should tensions between the Trump administration and Islamic Republic reach a boiling point. Intelligence officials and former White House officials confirmed to Congress on Tuesday that such an attack is not only plausible, but relatively easy for Iran to carry out at a time when the Trump administration is considering abandoning the landmark nuclear deal and reapplying sanctions on Tehran. Yet are President Trump's tweets nothing more than the very method to what most on the left perceive to be madness? We can't forget that not even a year ago, President Trump was involved in a Twitter spat with Kim Jong-un and North Korea, with President Trump's famous "My button is bigger than yours" tweet mulled over by the mainstream media for weeks. And quite suspiciously, as Tucker Carlson points out within his video, while the MSM hawed and hemmed about President Trump's tweets about North Korea, they have said very little about his recent tweets to Iran's President Rouhani, as if they thoroughly approve of America getting into a war with Iran. Yet as the 2002 exercises show, such a war could very well be a war that we could never win. And as this July 26 story over at the Daily Mail reported, According to one Iranian Special Forces leaders, should the US bomb Iran, sleeper agents in America and elsewhere around the world would destroy every real estate property that President Trump owns. According to the National Organization for Civil Registration, an organization of the Ministry of Interior of Iran, the United States has the highest number of Iranian people living outside of their own country. While immigration from Iran to the U.S. between the 1940s and 1970s was very limited, following the Iranian Revolution in 1979, the U.S. became a huge destination for Iranian students and some of their most wealthy families, and as Wikipedia reports, by the year 2000, more than 380,000 Americans of Iranian ancestry were living here. And while we firmly believe that not all or even most Iranian Americans have ill intentions towards our country, the fact that Barack Obama allowed U.S. citizenship to 2,500 Iranians as part of the nuclear deal should be of some concern, especially considering Obama's ties to the Muslim Brotherhood and his alleged ties to the terror group Hezbollah. Did Barack Obama not only allow but help to fund a stealth invasion of America? According to this November of 2015 story over at the Clarion Project, there were more than 80 radical mosques in the U.S. back then, according to national security analyst Ryan Morrow in this story over at the Daily Caller. Spread all throughout the country from East Coast to West, we remind you that while Obama was in office with Robert Mueller as his head of the FBI, they purged all mention of Islamic terror from FBI law enforcement training manuals. And with Iran now threatening to possibly unleash their sleeper agents in America, many who may have been embedded here for many, many years, we hope that President Trump listens to what Tucker Carlson has to say in this video while making his decision on whether to attack Iran, especially with one State Department insider claiming there is a eerily familiar drumbeat of war intensifying across Washington, D.C. And with members of the U.S. Congress long knowing that Iranian sleeper agents were gathering here in America, quite literally hibernating and waiting for the word to unleash their fury here, with Congress doing nothing about it. Should President Trump bomb Iran and sleepers unleash hell upon America, the same